Coming up, what an excellent day for brains. Well, howdy folks, and welcome to Minute 48 of the Exorcist Minute, a show where we endeavor to examine, extrapolate, and excavate the Exorcist minute by terrifying minute. My name is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I'm Keenan Diaz.
And we'll be your holy guides on this journey through what some have called the scariest movie of all time. Okay, so our minute begins with Mary Karras descending the subway steps.
And it ends with Dr. Klein lighting up a cigarette. Right outside of exam room A.
Right outside of exam room A. Jeez. Ain't no smoking signs in this hospital. I'm noticing. What is this? A McDonald's? Jeez.
There are no ashtrays though.
Yeah, also no ashtrays. That's one thing you should have at least, Dr. Klein.
Right, if you're gonna smoke, yeah.
Yeah, he tamps it out on his patients. No, but yeah, so we got the tail end of this dream. That's the first 5 seconds of this minute, and then we see that the dream is somewhat symmetrical, right? If you'll remember, our dream opened on the falling Joseph medal, right? It was falling not through space. It is somewhere in the world. It looks like and what I'm finding now, even as I'm pausing and looking at this background, it almost looks like faces. I know in the last minute we concluded, this is some kind of like pattern, like you would see specifically on a rug, which is weird because unless the rug is hanging vertically, why would the medallion be falling this way? It should be falling towards the rug, not like down its length, right? Unless this is a rug store.
Aha, we've solved it.
Right? They're in a rug store.
They're in a rug store, and that's where he decided to take off his most prized possession, his St. Joseph's medal, and dropping it on the floor dramatically.
Right.
That's what I think of your prices, Crazy Eddie.
Yeah. Can your prices go any lower, Crazy Eddie? Like as low as, say, this medal?
Hey, don't come in here every weekend, drop your medal on the floor. Every week, this guy. Wait for Labor Day, you can't afford full price.
There's old medal dropping Marin over there. But yeah, folks, if you're watching this on a thing that you can easily pause, check out the background when this medal is falling. I'm going to go ahead and double down on my name for instances of pareidolia in this film when we see faces formed out of seemingly innocent things, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess a hidden howdy is whenever it's evil pareidolia, right?
Yes, I like it.
Yeah. Well, I guess that. I guess that would be all the time, right, Keenan? Is pareidolia ever not creepy or evil?
Because pareidolia, again, is our sensory nature as animals is to observe. Oh, that could be a predator over in the woods. Oh, that could be a predator behind that rock. So we see faces everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm thinking now, even like when animators of those like old Disney cartoons, they would put like faces on like trees and a happy song. I was always like,
You don't like flowers and trees, dancing trees, singing
no.
it? Yeah.
With the little smiley faces.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say is that, it's not always creepy. So animators and designers have figured out how to use this to their advantage to make things, the smiley faced t-shirt that emerges in the 70s.
Okay,
that's a pareidolia. That is, all it is dot, dot, line. And we go, oh, a face. So your emoticons and your emoji, those are pareidolia. So we take advantage of that to make things friendly. And then in my Disney class on the history of Walt Disney, the man, I like to extrapolate his influence and say like, well, there's a reason why your iPhone is round rather than square. It's much easier to make an iPhone or a laptop that is square, right? That's easier for them to make it, but rounded edges are happier.
Oh,
they hug you back. They're your buddies.
They're gentler, yeah.
Yeah, they look like Mickey Mouse, right?
It's like sharp edges, like, hey, don't bother me, right?
Yeah, we had a brick cell phone, those ones that people make fun of now, and it was really cool. We didn't use it a lot when I was a kid. We used it really just to keep in the car in case of emergencies because they were very expensive to use and very rare. But yeah, those things would cut into your face as you talked to them.
Yes, yeah, definitely. But yeah, so speaking of faces, right, back to this face. So guys, if you sync up, right, if you're on Amazon watching this thing, right, it might be the same elsewhere. But if you sync up at 47:03, so 47 minutes and 3 seconds, right, there is a very definite demonic face going on over and to the left of this medallion. Keenan, I kind of sprung this on you real quick. Do you happen to be able to pull this up and see it?
Oh, yeah. It's got a red little nose and brow and two little eyes and a mouth that's going, "Rawr, give me that medallion."
I'm cuckoo for medallions.
They're good for my digestion.
Oh, boy. This is when St. Joseph tastes very Catholic. But yeah, so as we lower past this face, this very symmetrical carpet-looking design, the camera follows it for a little, and now I don't know what I'm looking at here, right? This could be anything, but the next shot is clearly cobblestones. But before we get to the cobblestones, Keenan, do you know what I'm talking about? So we leave the carpet, and now what the heck is going on there? It
looks like exposed brick or something, right? So it looks like a brick pattern, and it's like rust colored, right?
Yeah.
So you said in the last minute, which I don't know for our listeners if that was like a week ago or not. At this point, for me, it was just a little while ago. But you said where this carpet is, and it's foreshadowing somewhere.
Well, I thought I knew where this carpet was.
And you're not going to tell us.
I mean, there is a part in near the end of the movie where, I mean, there's only one location in the end of the movie. Let's be real. But like that place has a carpet, and
it does,
and the metal falls to that carpet, right? But
okay.
That's what I thought. But then the camera goes lower, and we're looking at, like, I don't know what this is, right?
It's outside, right? It must be.
It must be, right? And we're not talking about like the like definitely cobblestones that come next. It's like right before, like we're still in this shot where the metal is falling and the metal falls out of the frame, and we're looking at, it looks like it's outside or something like that. It looks like Keenan is saying exposed brick. And so now I don't know what to think, because like, how is a carpet suspended above, outside above exposed brick, right? Like what is going on here? But yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
Great. Follow us as we examine,
extrapolate, and excavate. Yeah.
Well, we didn't solve Father Karras's dream. Sorry.
Right. Or the problem of evil.
Right. How do you solve a problem like the Zuzu?
Oh, God.
We don't know.
Oh my God. But yeah, so we lower past this face, and we get to this weird image in the background, this blurry image. And then the next shot, right, very clearly cobblestones, as the Joseph medallion finally falls to the earth, striking the stones. We are ripped from this dream by a scream. Very jarring. This gets me every single time.
Yeah, absolutely. We do not expect it. Out of everything we might want to expect, we don't expect that.
Right. Yeah. Now, Keenan, I think you mentioned this word before. In case we're keeping track of the vocabulary that we're learning in this class, is this a sound bridge? Because the sound of the next scene bleeds over into the dream.
Right. So similar to how we had when we start the dream sequence, we're hearing still Damien snoring and breathing noises from before.
Right.
That's a sound bridge from the first scene to the second one. That would be I have to hold up my hands like a preschooler. That would be an L cut. Where the sound bridge is coming from the previous scene into the next one. So what we have here is the opposite. It is a holding up my right hand, a J cut, where we are still on the first scene, but the sounds from the second scene are starting early.
Interesting. Okay. I really like that. Okay. So sound bridges, L cuts and J cuts. Great.
Right.
Awesome. So very quickly, as if we ourselves are being ripped from a dream, we are taken from the dream sequence and into the office of Dr. Klein once again.
Hey,
it's
favorite doctor.
Our favorite doctor. Right?
Our only doctor.
Our only doctor. For now.
Right. But like in the Social Network, it's like, you were my best friend. No, Mark, I was your only friend.
Oh. And yeah, so here we see that Reagan is the one screaming. She is being held by that nurse from before, and she does not look happy. Reagan, I mean, not the nurse.
Right. Again, like we're noticing some things because we're doing this shot by shot, minute by minute. But like, again, we're talking about how that nurse just like, I am not here for your your little white girl horror movie stuff. Yeah. She's like, she's not particularly bothered by Reagan, screaming and doing this like murder. Just another day at the office for her.
Just another work day. It actually looks like she's got a mask on now, right?
Exactly,
she's got this gentle smile, like this is a regular occurrence, right?
But she's thinking about what her husband's going to have ready for dinner when she gets
exactly.
home, right?
Yeah. Precisely. But yeah, so Reagan continues screaming and she says, I don't want it. And we see what she doesn't want is a shot, which is very understandable, right? I don't want a shot. Nobody wants a shot. Now, if we're following the book timeline, this shot is to prepare her for the EEG, right? Measuring brain activity, right? Is that what it says in the screenplay? What is it like? Does it say anything about this specific shot?
It doesn't quite say. So it's in the screenplay. It's talking about an X-ray. So that might be. Well, it says here the next scene, Reagan is having her brain X-rayed, which I thought at first, he's sort of using a generic sort of term,
right?
And then afterwards, he has in parentheses arteriogram. So he's having she's having her arteries in her brain X-rayed.
Oh my God! Wait, the arteriogram. That's the other thing, isn't it?
Yes,
that's the other really scary, like really horrible,
really scary one. The one that made people puke and leave. Yeah.
Oh. Huh. Okay. Well. All right. Well, whatever this shot is for. It like she doesn't want it. Yeah.
Right.
And actually, so one thing I noticed in the back of this shot. So we got. So this is 10 seconds in for the time stamp. We got Chris down in the left bottom corner, Reagan almost center, and then the nurse and Klein to her right, and the wall is a corner. Is that like more dynamism that you were talking about before? Like we don't have a flush, flat surface that's perpendicular to our vision.
Right. Oftentimes flat space. Some people use flat space. I mean, at film school, like at UNLV Film where I teach, we try to encourage film students not to use flat as a default. Like, oh, the room is square, so I'm going to have things perpendicular, right? But you can use flat space, like Wes Anderson uses flat space to make things really composed, right? Ernst Lubitsch, one of the old school masters of comedies, like To Be or Not to Be and Trouble in Paradise, he would use flat space to make everything look really twee, and like people are saying these outrageous sexual comedy things, but everything looks really polished and everything looks kind of calm, right? So yeah, when we have this sort of dynamism where we have this space away from the camera, this depth, and then we start having, if we're shooting flat and everyone's lined up in a row, everyone's about the same size, right?
Right.
But if we're shooting in deep space and everyone's in a row, the people who are furthest away will look smaller, the people who are closest to us will look larger.
Right.
Yeah, and that's happening here a little bit.
Yeah. And this one is even more unique because of the two colors here. We got one wall, the left one, sort of this baby blue, and the right one is white. And so then we got Reagan like split in the middle of that.
Right. Between the medical establishment and her family.
Yes. Right. So being almost the subject of this tug of war, right? You got the doc and the nurse over on the white side and mom on the blue side. Right. And so I guess, that's what we make of it, right? The medical and family. That's what we're getting.
Yeah. And I want to talk about this shot that Dr. Klein is administering, right? So he has put this, we've seen him in a couple shots ago now, because these things are moving very fast in the stream sequence and also here. It's a lot of different takes. So sorry if we're going all over the place or if I'm going all over the place. But we have this shot that Father Klein is putting into the...
Father Klein?
Oh, God. Mr. Klein.
Mr. Klein.
Oh, gosh. Dr. Father, Reverend Dr. Father.
She's your doctor. He's your father. He's your doctor.
He's a doctor and a father. So we put the syringe into this medicine and he pulls some out and he squirts some out of it.
Yes.
Right. It's interesting. Like, so sometimes nowadays, because we learn a lot about how the world is supposed to work or how jobs are supposed to work through media, right? So nowadays you hear still about people like, oh, the nurse didn't do that thing. She didn't squirt some of the the liquid out, so there's nothing in this, or it's some kind of trick, or they're doing it wrong, or what have you. And so like this is an example of like, apparently this is outdated medical procedure that at some point they used to have to do that, but now with the kind of syringes that they have today, they don't have to do it, right? But we're still so used to it. Yeah. But again, like now that's baked into visual language, right? Like that's how you get a shot ready, and you have this big ugly squirt of medicine that just like, oh God, now that's gonna be what's gonna happen to me. Like ill. Right. Okay. Gross, terrible. Blah, liquid going crazy.
Fluids in me.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I don't know if our audience wants to hear this, but I had a student tell me like, inside of our bodies, we don't think of our bones as being wet, but of course they are. Right? Because whenever we see bones, they're out there like in the desert or something, and they're all
they're
dry.
Right?
Yeah, but like, your bones are just squishing around in a tub of liquid that is you.
Wow.
So you decide whether you want to keep that in the show.
Yeah. Folks, we're just meat sleeves for our bones.
And somewhere in there is a consciousness and a soul, or both.
Yeah. Somewhere underneath that fleshy sweater that our bones are wearing.
Okay, well, here's another one that you could also cut out if you need to.
Sure.
So I heard that we think about our stomachs and our intestines as being inside of us, right?
Yes.
But the opening to our stomach and intestines is our mouth, and the other opening is our rectum. Mm-hmm. And so really, those are still outside. That were basically long, skinny donuts.
We are that donut that the machine got wrong somehow. And then they just opened the template, the mold, and they're like, what the? God was like, I just wanted to make donuts. That's all I wanted to do. I was like, what are you going to call this one? Man.
Man. I should call him Adam.
Yes. That was actually an exclamation. It was like, Adam.
Right. No, now I need to make another one. I don't want to start
I don't want him to be lonely.
Well,
I mean, no one's going to love him. He's so ugly. Look at him.
Right, but to redesign it into something, we'd have to admit that Adam was a mistake. So yes. We'll make this one pretty much the same.
Yeah.
There's Eve.
It's not all berries. It's all bones.
Oh, geez. What gross thing was I going to say? I'm sure I had more gross medical ideas for him. And then I was, when you open up a pill bottle of usually ibuprofen, it's mostly aspirin, but oftentimes an ibuprofen or any kind of pain medication, you open up a pill bottle and there's a wad of cotton in there.
Yes.
And that wad of cotton used to do something. It used to, I believe, keep the pills from rattling around because they would disintegrate or something like that. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, they don't need that wad of cotton anymore. But we're so used to it there that when people would open up a bottle of aspirin and there wasn't a wad of cotton, they would go, oh, someone's wrong. Someone's been in here.
Yeah, someone's tampered with this.
Right.
Oh, wow.
So that cotton is completely useless. And it's just adding to our global warming problem, right?
Wow.
Yeah, so that because it's easier than educating the public that now with no cotton.
Yeah.
Right.
Aspirin, you don't need this cotton.
Yeah, cotton-proof aspirin.
Wow. Interesting. I was going to say so the thing that Dr. Klein does with the with the squirting of the syringe, right? Mm-hmm. Like I've also seen them like they hold it up to the light and they like tap it with their fingernail or something like they're like, I don't know, this will mix the juices in there or something like that.
Oh, shouldn't they have done that in the factory?
That's what I'm thinking. It's like if you're mixing it now, right before you stick it into me, nobody take that out of context.
Right. But it's just one of those it's one of those movie things, right? That feels right. The nurse holds it up to the light and is like, it's liquid, all right. Right. Mm-hmm. There's not an actual function for that in the real world, right?
Wow. Oh, Keenan, I thought of another one.
We're gonna get everyone unsubscribing from us.
Yeah, everyone's gonna be uncomfortable. You know that your teeth, when you're brushing your teeth, you're actually cleaning the only part of your skeleton that you can clean. Somebody told me that once, and I was like, "Oh wow, thanks."
They're all bones.
Yeah, they're all bones. No,
they're my favorite bones.
Yes.
We have little names for them.
Yeah. They're the only bones I care about. Well, no, that's not true. Yeah.
Right, you can't do anything about your spine and stuff, but you can.
Yeah, right.
We want to be on like first dates and job interviews and make sure people can see our pretty bones.
Right. Nobody's out there brushing their spine, right? Or I hope not. Oof. Yeah.
Oof.
Look at those pearly whites up and down his back. Okay. All right.
Oh,
okay.
I thought of another one.
Okay.
So, you think of your brain, right?
Yes.
Maybe you don't want to think about your brain. I also heard that, your brain is the only thing that thinks of itself.
Right. Yeah.
But think of your brain, and when you imagine a brain, you probably think it's like a gummy brain, that you get at Halloween, like a gummy brain. But it's mostly just water and fat, and there's not a lot of actual substance to it. So you couldn't necessarily pick it up and hold it and have it. Like your fingers would sort of like slough into it.
Oh no! Like it would just like melt out of my hands.
Not exactly. If you put enough pressure on it, yeah. Like it's not like a Jello or something. But yeah, it's mostly just fat. There's not like muscle in there.
Oh my god! So I can't like pretend I'm Davy Crockett like Mr. Burns did in Treehouse of Horror and put it on top of my head.
Well, you might be able to get away with that once.
And then it would be. Wow.
Like it's not a muscle and there's no bones in it, and it's just incredibly squishy.
I have some bad news. Your brain bones are broken.
Oh, shouldn't have done that.
Oh my God. Oh, you're making me think. You're making my brain think all of these things that it doesn't want to think. Oh God.
All right, let's move on here. But right. All of this stuff, we've said it in previous minutes. But if you're like listening out of order, as some people do, or what have you, we're getting to the minutes here that are, for a lot of people, the scariest minutes of The Exorcist, and the ones that people lost control of themselves of during movie screenings in 1973, but also in 2000. But in 1973, they were reported in the newspaper and became part of the movie's marketing, that people were losing their shit and losing their consciousness during these scenes and passing out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And here we got like a little kind of like prelude to that, right? So Dr. Klein is able to get that shot in her. Again, Keenan, this looks like a real needle going into Linda Blair's arm. Am I correct? I thought like maybe we would cut away. I thought there would be like some kind of like camera trickery, but nope, it's all one shot. One shot, the needle goes into her arm. Or am I missing something? Like, is this maybe like a collapsing needle?
I think they pulled a trick on you, but it's a very convincing trick. But again, it's not her body double. It's not Eileen Dietz or anybody else.
It's definitely not. No.
Face, right? But no, I believe that Dr. Klein.
Yes.
Okay, I believe. Have you had any of your students call you mommy yet?
Yes.
Okay,
I've had mom. I've had dad. More so mom.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, anyways,
but mom.
I believe that Dr. Klein's, Barton Heyman's left hand, which is holding Linda Blair's arm, is probably concealing some kind of magic trick / pro wrestling trick. Here.
Interesting.
Yeah. So go back and look at it. It's very convincing. I don't mean to, ruin the magic tricks for people, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that he's stabbing something that might be like pinned to the back of her or something. Because he's certainly poking something, because then he's able to like a pencil sort of no longer support its gravity, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think you actually see anything, but that's what movies do. They convince you.
You're right. Yeah. Right. The way that his left hand is over her arm, there could be something in there. Right. Yeah. Okay.
And then in the next shot, we see the needle already, quote unquote, in Linda Blair's arm, but I don't believe it's actually in it. I believe it's just pushing against it.
Oh yeah, you're right. It doesn't look like a puncture.
No,
it looks like it's poking it.
Right. And in this reverse shot, we might be looking at the needle, but quickly, our attention goes to Chris, who is just in all this anguish, right? She's in the center of the frame, and she's like, oh, please, 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 right? So even if we do want initially to, oh God, let me look at that needle, that's terrible. Again, story in a film is usually conveyed through dialogue and performance. So yeah. So if that helps you, get through this scene some more, but yeah, it is one of the harder to watch things. Again, like not demon stuff. It's like little girl going through medical procedures.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Leave it to like. Yeah, they really did trick me. And it's like in here, it's my job to watch this thing minute by minute. And they still got me. Oof. Wow.
Yeah, I just watched it again with him stab. Oh, that, yeah.
Whoa.
I just explained it to you. And I still went like, oh, God, how could you?
I was thinking it's like, oh, maybe it's a collapsing needle. Like, how they have like collapsing knife blades or something like that,
right.
But no, yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But then that wouldn't allow him to, the advantage of this one is that, he can start moving his right hand away and keep the needle pinned into this little girl, right? Because I think it's really pinned into like a sponge back that's strapped to her or something like that.
Interesting.
That's another thing they'll do. Like so, this one isn't quite as elaborate, but you could also have a sponge that is attached to somebody or some kind of reservoir like that, and then when you put the knife or something in it, the sponge is already kind of pre-wet with something,
right?
With blood or goo or whatever, and then you can put in a clean knife and pull out with some splatter a messy knife.
Oh, okay. I like that.
Don't try it at home, though, kids.
No, please don't.
No.
Not do any of that stuff.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of really. I'm sure there's much more elaborate effect stuff than I could convey. YouTube tutorials and everything, but anything like that, if you, be safe with those things, please.
Yes, for sure.
The people who you're imitating are incredibly safe.
Yes,
or at least take a lot of pains to be, right?
Yes. And have trained like years and years and years to do stuff like this. Yeah.
Right.
So to that, I have a question, Keenan. Whose side are we supposed to be on right now? Because it would seem like Reagan is acting like unreasonable, right? Even Chris is there going like, honey, it's there to help you. Like you don't understand this, but we're trying to help you. And then immediately after, Reagan does what seems like a very unreasonable, very shocking thing, right? She spits in Klein's face and calls him a fucking bastard, right? And so for a split second, you think like, geez, this doc is trying to help you. But then you're like, wait, all of this is pointless, right? Because it's a demon, right? And then we're maybe 10 years away from a bunch of movies about kids who are special or have powers or dreams or claim to know imaginary people or have been to imaginary worlds and who like in all these like 80s movies like are taken to a medical facility to be either examined or quote unquote cured of their like specialness, right? I'm thinking right now of like Flight of the Navigator, I'm thinking Return to Oz, I'm thinking E.T. or even like Stranger Things, which is like echoing all of that stuff from back in the day, right? All of those movies that featured Jim Henson creations that like only the main protagonist could see, and because of that, the adults thought there was something wrong with the kid's brain, right? And so, in less than 10 years, we start getting a lot of movies with fantastical elements, starring kids. Where they're right and they see the truth and the truth is fantastical, and the adults, and usually doctors are in there somewhere, are wrong. And I'm thinking like The Wizard too, right? Where the police and the CPS like are the bad guys because they're going to ruin this kid's fun.
Yeah,
right?
And a lot of that gets extended to like so the police and the local authorities and the schools, but then also like in ET, it's explicitly like Reagan style. The government has come and the government is against kids and imagination and love and fun. We got to stop this right now. Yeah. That's really interesting, Lester. I hadn't really thought about that. How in the 70s, I mean there are kid fantasies, but not this big crop like that. Is it specifically because of Spielberg coming up? Also there is in the 80s this attempt by the studios to recognize that like teenagers are their own demographic who go to their own types of movies. So some of those movies are sort of like aimed at teenagers specifically, and how cool and powerful they are. I'll have to think about that a little bit more about why that would be. In the 70s, again, the demographic is kind of back to like everybody watching movies together, the same movies.
Right. And I'm thinking like, just like to take this out of context, right? Like if a person never saw The Exorcist and you show them this scene right here with Doc, with Nurse, and Mom holding Reagan who doesn't want this shot and who, like who would they think is the bad guy / good guy of the film, right? And I'm realizing as I say it that it's really unfair, show them just a snippet of something and they'll project the current era's concerns onto it, right? So if it was the 80s, if it was the 70s, if it was the the 2000s, right? Because that's what we do, we fill in the gaps, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's really interesting where if we just take the visual language out of context, right, it's telling us one thing, but then in context, we know the full truth. I mean, that's what helps us as audience members feel like we're smart. Like the movie, we're not smart. The movie's smart, So the movie allows us to feel smart by like saying like, oh yeah, look at this. Everything that we might show you is like this little girl's throwing a tantrum, and the mother is right, and the doctor is right, and look at the nurse. She has seen this before, right? The little girl is out of whack here. And then in context, it's like, no, these people are doing the wrong thing. This is going to be part of the problem. We're not going in the right direction.
Right. Yeah. And so once again, folks, I paused at just the right time. So Dr. Klein has given Reagan the shot, after which she spits in his face, and we cut for just a second as she says, you fucking bastard. And it's this perfect shot into another corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have Mom in the very back. And guys, this shot is just like a second long. But I swear, if you just watch Ellen Burstyn here, you're going to see some amazing stuff. The shot starts with her looking at Dr. Klein in this like embarrassed way, like her daughter just spit on him. And this might be the first time that Reagan has done that, right? But then watch Ellen's face change as her daughter calls him a fucking bastard, right? It ends just as she's maybe about to say something like Reagan, right? Or something like that, right? And you can see the range of emotions from embarrassment to shock. It's really great, right?
Right. And similar to that shot that you were talking about with all the depth, and Reagan is in the middle of this blue wall to the left, white wall to the right. Now we've reversed that pattern. So Chris is, as you say, completely center punched here in the middle, and on the right is that blue wall, on the left is the white wall. So we're exactly mirroring that language.
Right. And I like the nurse is perfectly professional, doesn't even acknowledge Reagan's behavior as anything deserving attention, right? I'm telling you, she has all the answers, Keenan. If this movie were called The Nurse, it'd be a lot shorter. Give her 10 minutes alone in the room, some tea and some cookies, right? They just talk it out and boom, right? Then
Howdy's gone.
Well, see, she exposes Dr. Klein's malpractice, right? She takes over as the head doctor,
right?
Yeah,
good for her.
She's nice though. She lets him be the head nurse, right? And Captain Howdy is the secretary, right? Yeah. So he's out in the waiting room. He's like, "Hey, you two kids, knock it off!" Right?
He says, no smoking, honey, please."
Yeah, right.
This is the doctor's office.
Yeah. It's got a little nail file for those like terrible claws that Captain Howdy has, right?
Right, exactly.
Now we cut from there to Father Karras, or is it still Dimi? Right? He's doing a mass, and we come in just as he says, "Remember also, Lord, thy servant Mary Karras." And try as he might, Karras does not look convinced of the words that he is saying up there. This is some great acting from Jason Miller as he speaks. If you notice, there's a pause after he says his mother's name. And I guess it could be intentional, like in his delivery, but it also looks like he forgot where he was for just a second, right? He says his mother's name, maybe falls into a memory, and then he has to shake that off, like, because, oh yeah, I'm a priest. I'm doing a sermon.
Right. Can I read to you a little bit from the screenplay?
Sure,
This also includes our previous minute with Dyer. So our scene with Karras' funeral, there's nothing in our draft of the screenplay of the dream sequence that we've been covering. So everything's a little bit different in these early scenes about just the order of them. But So we have Father Dyer saying goodbye to Karras, a reading from the screenplay of Blatty. Karras, stealing is a sin. A beat. Then tenderly, Dyer touches a hand to Karras' shoulder in goodnight. But as he starts to move towards the door, Karras' hand reaches out and grips Dyer's wrist, squeezing and giving a little shake in a gesture of gratitude and deep friendship. At this moment, the camera is tight on the hands, but then goes to Dyer as he nods in acknowledgement. Then Dyer stares down, and camera follows his gaze to tight at the hands again, as healing sleep at last comes to Karras, and his grip slackens and his hand slowly falls. Dyer, off-screen in a whisper, "Good night, Damien." Interior Holy Trinity Church, very early morning. Only 2 or 3 worshippers in the church. Karras, in his black vestments, is at the main altar saying Mass, while washing at small table to side of altar. "O Lord, I have loved the beauty of thy house and the place where thy glory dwelleth. Take not away my soul, O God, with the wicked, nor my life with men of blood." Another angle and a time lapse. Now Karras' eyes are moistening with tears as, and he continues on. So I think it's interesting. We talked a little bit about your observation that Blatty in the book and Blatty in the screenplay is, he's a good writer. So I don't want to criticize this necessarily, but his impulse is to highlight emotionality a little bit more. It doesn't feel maudlin, right? As you read that, it doesn't feel like, oh, how sappy or anything like that.
Right.
But he calls out like this shot of the hands touching and holding each other and what it means. And it's very significant. And in our version, it's incredibly ambiguous, right? We're like, oh, geez, that feels human. But what does it mean? So it's even like Dyer and Karras don't even know what that means, that Karras just did that there, right?
Yeah.
And then now again, in this version of the Mass here in the movie, it's his mother's funeral. In the script, he's already had the funeral earlier, and this is just a regular Mass. And so here it says, now Karras' eyes are moistening with tears. Not a bad impulse, but Miller, Jason Miller, and Billy Friedkin don't want us to see moistening eyes.
Right. It seems like the decision is to have him be almost numb. Right. Yeah. And I don't know if this is maybe her funeral, but maybe this is because like you were saying before, like we mentioned the names of the dead in like a regular mass, right?
Sorry, I didn't know. I don't know what that's called.
Oh, yeah.
It's
I don't know the name for that either. Yeah, but it is like, something that just happened, and it's like, oh, remember thy servant, so and so.
Yes,
and like it strikes me that like so, how strange and terrible it must be. Like you figure he's said, remember thy servant 1,000 times before about other people in other masses, right? And then one day, as part of your job, you're saying the one for your own mother. Right. That's got to, have some effect on you. Right. Especially if you were Karis and, and you're where he is at in his faith. Right. Which is to say almost giving up hope. Right. I guess it might be different for a priest who is like strong in his faith to be the one who says the name of a loved one, remember thy servant. That could be a very beautiful thing, like be honored to do the mass of somebody who you love. Right.
But I'm sure he doesn't have to do it. Right. I'm sure that the other priests at his diocese would be like, we could do that for you. Like, it doesn't have to be you. Right. I'm sorry. I can't give the homily to this woman because I'm her son.
Right.
How could this be? It's a riddle.
Yeah. But he's also a father.
He's also a father. Time travel. There's cloning.
Yes.
But yeah, like
we're referencing that joke that nobody, or that riddle that nobody can figure out, that the doctor is a woman, for Christ's sakes. Yeah.
But yeah, like knowing him, he's a little, I don't want to say masochistic, because I don't mean any of the sexualness around that, but like he is putting on this sort of penance for himself, right? Testing his faith,
right?
Of like I'm going to test if I'm strong enough to do this. I'm sure he doesn't actually need to be doing it.
That's an angle that I never thought of. I always took it as like, this is like the day to day of like, this is his job. He has to say the names of the people that you're supposed to remember, and it just happens to be his own mother, and like how like how much of a an effect that has on him. But so you're saying that like he may have had like the option to not do that, to have one of the other priests do that.
Who's writing up the homily for the day? Right. I mean, they would have, so the other option is that they are very insensitive. They're a very insensitive coworker to put that in there, because like she's not a member of. I mean, I'm assuming this is in Georgetown and not in New York where she had passed.
Right. Yeah.
Right. She's not part of this parish. So someone has put this in, and I don't know. The priesthood is a different type of job, but it's still a workplace. I'm sure that someone is not like, oh, I'm going to put in this name, Mary Karis. I'm not going to connect that that's Father Damien's mother.
Right. So it's got to be Karis himself deciding to say this.
That's what I think. Right. That stays within what we know about his character. Right.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, like, and then, yeah, that just adds like a whole nother level to this thing. Again, like as a priest, that's your job is to say, remember thy servant, with all of your being, with all of your mind and your heart, like remember thy servant, whether this person is related to you or not. Right. And then just having them be related to you, adds, it could add a beauty to it, if you are like very strong in your faith, but it could also add like this weight of like I can't even give her a proper send off. What's wrong with me? Right. I am not worthy. Right. And like speaking of those are the next words that are spoken in this scene by the congregation. Right. Which, I think mirrors Karis's like inner monologue here that he is not worthy. So again, we got this like double conundrum of like, is there a God, and am I worthy of him? And for Karis, both answers are no, which is impossible, right? That doesn't, that doesn't stop his conundrum though from like eating him alive, right? I guess paradox is the better word, maybe, right? But like you would think that's like him worrying about whether or not there is a God would cancel out his worrying about whether or not he is worthy of this God. It's like, well, okay, there's no God, so I don't have to worry about being worthy. Or like, oh, there is a God. Well, then, I can work to be worthy, right? But like, no, both answers are no for him. There is no God, and he is also not worthy of God, right? Ugh.
Yes.
Yeah. We end a lot of these with like, ugh.
Oh yeah, and I wanted to mention that because this is the end of our dream sequence. Like, in the book, you read from us some dream sequences, right?
Yes.
And they all, the ones that we have so far with Chris, I mean, they've been like the idea of nothingness and bleakness and blackness. And so it's interesting to see that Damien's are also, not necessarily happy.
Nope.
Why can't you just dream about, the sports game you watched on TV that morning?
Right?
Why has it got to be this kind of stuff?
It's got to be. It's always got to be. Again, going back to like what we were talking about in the last minute, right? Anytime dreams are inserted into fiction, it seems like I can only think of it not being good. Even if it's a good dream, the punchline of it is, it was only a dream. But usually it's like, oh, I'm here to warn you about something, right. or it's a bad dream because you feel guilty about something, and you're like, oh, it was only a dream.
That's the thing. I'm not a psychiatrist, obviously, but like I don't put a lot of stock into dream interpretation, right? I mean, oftentimes your friend or your family, they were like, God, I had this terrible dream, and they explain it to you, and like, oh, and then you want to know why you dreamt that,
right?
We still know so little in neuroscience about like why do we need to sleep. So we even have that trouble. Like, so why do we need to sleep? Let alone why do we need to dream? We don't really understand it. But so right now, and this could change, but right now I'm of the belief that like dreams don't mean anything, but they, they're sort of firing. Information firing in your brain that you are forced to watch, but that's not like, I mean, your brain, which again is a big pile of
fatty
tissue, right? Something between like
that's you, folks. That's you.
Something between Jell-O and sponge cake. Yeah. It doesn't have intention where it's trying to tell you something in secret. Like it's like, or else it would tell you it consciously. I mean, that would be the evolutionary thing to do, right? To save you is to have conscious thoughts, not these riddles, right? Why would it help you if your brain sends you cryptic riddles that you have to solve, like a Harry Potter mystery, in order to have some evolutionary advantage,
right?
But they feel so much like they mean something, right?
Yeah. Unless there's some other part of your brain that you got to be like sly in front of. It's like, hey, don't let him know this important plot point. I'm watching you. He's got his little beat cop hat on and his little billy club, and he's like, don't you give him any exposition. You give him any exposition. You let him figure this out by himself. No helpsies, right? Yeah, I'm just thinking of a little brain with a little security guard hat.
Oh yeah, that's him. Your brain is your Harry Potter sorting hat.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah,
it's like you will be emotionally aggressive to those you love. Oh, why? That sounds ever so terrible. You'll have to learn it on your journey here in humanity. Good luck,
Dick.
No. Yeah. Let's see, Lester. Let's see, Lester. You'll be emotionally cold when you most need to be emotionally open.
No.
Oh no.
Oh. How many years is it going to take to work on this sorting hat?
7 years at least, and we'll break the 7th year into 2 to make more money.
Oh, I see what you did there. Oh, it's
there you go. And then we're going to. Then we'll this reference manual that we made just for fun as a Christmas gift, we'll turn that into 3 years on its own. And no one will want it, but everyone will see it.
Oh my God. But yeah, I heard somewhere before that it's more akin to like when your computer this shows how much I know or don't know about computers, but like isn't there a thing like when your computer is like, it's like for all intents and purposes, it's off. Yeah, defragmenting. Yeah. And it's like, it's getting rid of like all of the associations and all of the, all of the cookies and everything like that, right? And so like your brain is in sleep mode and it needs to, I guess, like clean up all of the associations that you've made like in your waking time. But for some reason, for whatever reason, it has to pass in front of your consciousness, so you see it happening. Like you see your brain throwing out all the garbage, and you're like, "Oh, this piece of garbage is associated with this piece of garbage," and oh no,
Right. So in that model, you're making new memories by accident because like some of these things are so disturbing that you're like, oh my gosh, I was on a date and it turned out to be my mother in the tunnel of love with me instead of my crush. Oh God, there must be something wrong with me. And then it's creating things that you can't shake and that are new memories for you, which if that's what's happening, that is, as you see, an evolutionary flaw. That's a problem.
Yes. Yeah. So we're still developing, folks. Yeah.
Right. That's not helpful.
Yeah. And my mother in the tunnel of love told me that I hadn't studied for the exam.
Right. And then it turns out the tunnel of love is in the school. And it feels both like your actual high school and has all the right feelings, but it looks like the high school you saw on TV.
Right. Yes. You know what? Like recently, all of my nightmares have been like when I was young. All of my nightmares were like physical harm to me, or like some kind of like existential. Like I would dream about a monster or a witch that I saw on TV or something like that. Right. And lately, all of the dreams that I can remember now. Well, first of all, they're all bad. I don't remember good dreams anymore.
Right.
But like all of the dreams that I'm having now are like I fucked up in some way. Like, oh, you didn't do your taxes right. You filled out this form and now the police and the accountants are at your door and you got to like go through all of this bad list or shame on you. Or like you, it's like, oh, you're at the line in the DMV and, you've been waiting for 4 hours and you finally get up there and like, okay, all we need is your XYZ form. It's like, oh no, I forgot that at home.
I ate it.
I ate it.
Like
right? I was so hungry in line. And then everyone at the DMV is like, shame. Look at this asshole.
Right. Again, I'm not a psychiatrist or a doctor, and I'm sure that there's much more cutting edge, or maybe not, because again, it's some of it's so hard to measure, right? About what dreams are for. But like you wake up with those types of dreams and you're like, oh my gosh, like my conscious is trying to tell me about I'm a fuck up, or my conscious is trying to spur me into getting over this fear of being a fuck up, right?
Yeah.
It might be, though, I mean, I don't know if this helps you or not, but it might be that you have a lot of dreams and the only ones that you remember and wake up to and think about are the ones that are already about the things that you are worried about in your everyday life.
Yes, I think that is the case. I think, and yeah, I have heard like we may remember like one dream out of like, a whole string of dreams that we have like throughout the night. Right. And actually like when, upon waking and trying to recount our dream, we might like conflate one dream with another that we had like, and then I was on the moon, but then, my English professor was there, and those were actually two separate dreams that happened so fast. Like apparently dreams like go by really, really fast, like in the span of like, is it seconds? I think
it might be. That's my understanding. Again, this could be outdated, and we're not medical professionals at all. But but I believe so. I believe that we think about ourselves as 8 hours of sleep, but we don't dream during those 8 hours. It's a very small part of that time when we do dream. Right. And so like we're getting flashes of dreams that feel like narratives that last a long time, but they're not always that at all.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's not like in the movies like Inception where we can read your dreams and we can see what's happening in them real time, because they're just flashes of neurological energy. Well, that's I'm sure that's the wrong way of saying it. Right. But then within them, they give the feeling of time and space.
Right. Yeah. And time seems so real in those dreams, even though like it's like it's the sensation of time that we're experiencing, right? The feeling of like this has been going on for hours or years or or seconds.
Yeah. And that's one of the ways, again, that film theorists talk about like films being oniric, that special term that we have that means that films are dreamlike, basically, is that they last, say, 2 hours, but it can feel like we are, it could feel like we have seen a movie that lasts for hundreds of years or thousands of years even. Right. Like 2001: A Space Odyssey is like 150,000 years long.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Or it's like when you're watching, a movie like The Exorcist, which is only supposed to be 132 minutes, but, these two chuckleheads are just going on about 1 minute of the film for hours.
And they're talking about their dreams. Some people's least favorite thing is when they're at a party and someone that they don't know tells them about a dream that they had. So if that's that's the advantage of having a podcast. Is that so if you get a podcast, I've learned you can just say your dreams and you can bore people into them, and they have to listen.
Yeah, this is going to be a very divisive episode, because I think I personally really like hearing about other people's dreams. But I know there's lots of people who are like, oh my God, just like, get on with the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, I love hearing my friends' dreams, that's for sure. But yeah, it's so intimate though. I think that's the problem I have when it's someone you don't know and they're talking about their dreams.
Oh yeah.
Like this is like, it's like, as if someone's like, you know what my secret hopes and wishes are? It's like, oh, I don't know. Yeah. You know what my greatest fears are? Because that's what happens in dreams, or at least, again, the dreams that we remember at the top of our consciousness.
Yeah. I was like, geez. I was like, it's like next thing you're going to ask me to like be inside your meat sweater with all your wet bones.
Your wet bones jingling around.
Ugh. Okay. Anyway,
yes, this is an important episode in our history. This is the episode where we lose all of our listeners, or we make a lot of other listeners. There might be some secret wet bone lovers out there. Like, oh, I found this wet bone podcast. You gotta listen to this. We
should change it. This is the Wet Bones Minute.
Because our bones are permeable, right? There's like water in them and water outside of them, and then the water sloshes through your bones.
Yeah, wet bony sponges, spongy bones. Oh my god! Okay. All right. But yeah, so we're back. We're back here. We're back with Father Karras, and we got this wide shot. This is Dahlgren Chapel. It's been cleaned up since last we saw it, for sure. We see that the statue of the Virgin. We see the statue of the Virgin Mary. Question: what happens when something is desecrated, like within the church? Do you think it's just like, physically cleaned up, or is there something that they have to do in addition, some kind of like blessing or ceremony, something like that? Like, I'm wondering about that now. It might be good, to research later, or maybe we can ask, some of our guests that we're thinking of having on pretty soon.
It's again interesting. In the understanding I've had about this movie since I've seen it, 20 years ago, is that there's magic that's happened that's destroyed this statue from the inside, right? We talked about like some kind of metal magic spike coming out of the statue.
Right. And we know, like, from the book, it's obviously it's Reagan going over there with clay and putting it on there, right? That's what the book says. But
exactly. And you could say, okay, that's the book, this is the movie, things are different. But yeah, when you start looking at it shot by shot and start thinking about it logically, yes, it must be clay. I mean, for a bunch of, when you look at it, it looks like clay. It looks like the clay that Reagan's using to make the dumb bird downstairs, all of that. And here it is again, and it's not broken.
Right.
So if it was magic that destroyed it from the inside out, then they took that one out and replaced it, and then that just raises a lot of questions. Like, okay, it's in the newspapers enough that Detective Kinderman is investigating this or that, right? But like, where's this statue that's broken from the inside? No, there's not, like, they don't call scientists in to figure it out. It's desecration and not like an obvious anti-miracle that's happened.
Right. Ooh, that's a good, anti-miracle. Right. But you would think that, like, if this wasn't the same statue, then that other statue is somewhere else. And you would think it's like it would be in Kinderman's like lab.
You'd hope so, right?
Because he would because you're not going to just throw that away. Like, you need that.
There'd be scientists looking it over and trying to figure it out. But instead, what it is, this stuff comes off. That really sucks that this happened to us, but we can kind of move on. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So we get a wide shot of this church, and yes, we see that there are people there as well. I, for some reason, thought this mass that Karras did when he mentions his mother was a private mass. This was back when I was talking about like the side altars in minute 32. But I guess this is a normal public mass.
Right.
But okay, so let's pause here and have a listen to this scene as Blatty wrote it, because again, I think he does a really good job here. And this is actually, this fits perfectly with like what you were saying, Keenan, because it kind of, it's on the same timeline, right? Because we Father Dyer has just left, and Karras is sleeping, and he wakes up in the middle of the night. So, a reading from the Book of Blatty. In the middle of the night, Karras awakened in tears. He had dreamed of his mother, standing at a window high in Manhattan. He'd seen her emerging from a subway kiosk across the street. She stood at the curb with a brown paper shopping bag, searching for him. He waved. She didn't see him. She wandered the street. Buses, trucks, unfriendly crowds. She was growing frightened. She returned to the subway and began to descend. Karras grew frantic, ran to the street and began to weep as he called her name. As he could not find her. As he pictured her, helpless and bewildered, in the maze of tunnels beneath the ground. He waited for his sobbing to subside, and then fumbled for the scotch. He sat on the cot and drank in darkness. Wet came the tears. They would not cease. This was like childhood, this grief. He remembered a telephone call from his uncle. Dimmy, the enemas affected her brain. She won't let a doctor come anywhere near her. Just keeps screaming things. Even talks to the goddamn radio. I figure she's got to go to Bellevue, Dimmy. A regular hospital won't put up with that. I just figure a couple of months and she's good as new. Then we take her out again, okay? Listen, Dimmy, I tell you, we already done it. They gave her a shot and then take her to the ambulance this morning. We didn't want to bother you except there's a hearing and we got to sign the papers. Now what? Private hospital? Who's got the money for that, Dimmy? You? He didn't remember falling asleep. He awakened in torpor, with memory of loss draining blood from his stomach. He reeled to the bathroom, showered, shaved, dressed in a cassock. It was 5:35. He unlocked the door to Holy Trinity, put on his vestments, and offered up Mass at the left side altar. Memento etiam, he prayed with bleak despair. Remember thy servant, Mary Caris. In the tabernacle door, he saw the face of the nurse at Bellevue Receiving, heard again the screams from the isolation room. You her son? Yes, I'm Damien Caris. Well, I wouldn't go in there. She's pitching a fit. He looked through the port at the windowless room with the naked light bulb hanging from the ceiling, padded walls, stark, no furniture, save for the cot on which she raved. Grant her, we pray thee, a place of refreshment, light, and peace. As she met his gaze, she'd grown suddenly silent, moved to the port with a baffled look. Why you do this, Dimmy? Why? The eyes had been meeker than a lamb's. Agnus Dei, he murmured, and bowed and struck his breast. Lamb of God, who takest away the sins of the world, grant her rest. As he closed his eyes, he held up the host. He saw his mother in the hearing room, her hands clasped gentle in her lap, her expression docile and confused as the judge explained to her the Bellevue psychiatrist's report. Do you understand that, Mary? She nodded, wouldn't open her mouth. They had taken her dentures. Well, what do you have to say about that, Mary? She proudly answered him. My boy, he speak for me. An anguished moan escaped from Caris as he bowed his head above the host. He struck his breast as if it were time and murmured, Domine non sum dignus. I am not worthy. Say but the word, and my soul shall be healed. Against all reason, against all knowledge, he prayed there was someone to hear his prayer. He did not think so. Yep. Again, just the weight of those words. It's passages like this that make me forget that, Blatty was mainly a comedy writer until we get to something like with Carl or The Demon or Burke or Kinderman, and you're like, oh yeah, this guy is really funny. But he is quoted as saying that The Exorcist ruined his comedy career. And it almost seems as if in these interviews, he isn't aware of how good his serious stuff like this is.
That's a really big lesson that I learned in grad school. We were lucky enough to have the Duplass brothers come in. They're sort of the center of what somebody called mumblecore. You know, it's not always a lot of people who make mumblecore movies don't like that term. Like the genre is basically named by people who didn't like it. So they're like, oh, it's just a bunch of dudes hanging around in their real houses and just mumbling and improvising their way through things. But the Duplass brothers are great, and so they make this very interesting style of film that's, you know, low key comedy, and it is a lot of people, you know, in their real apartments having real conversations. And they came and said that when they tried to make it in film at the first time, they were trying to make the type of movies that they liked, which was like Rocky. Yeah. So they were trying to make Rocky movies and sports movies and like big inspirational, you know, larger than life movies. And they had to realize that like, we're not good at that. And we have to make movies that we're good at, not just the kind of movies that we want to make. And we have the special skills to do this other type of movie. And we can do that really well. So oftentimes we're like the worst judges of what our ability is, right?
Yeah.
And Blatty can do both. He can do this comedy, but yeah, like, boy, not a comedy. I mean, this is not a comedy.
No. I mean, at least this specific part, chapter, right? Yeah. He has some really funny like dialogue. You know, when two characters are interacting, like his comedy shines through. But like it almost like you're saying, Keenan, it almost seems like he is discounting his ability to make like this like really like nice, sad, poetic stuff. Right? He struck his breast as if it were time. Like wow, you know.
Yeah. The stereotype about comedians, which I have found to be true, and you know, a lot of comedians, I'm sure in LA, are comedy actors. Like the idea that like successful comedians are mostly sad clowns, right? Like Robin Williams or something like that, right? Just incredibly depressive people. And of course, it's not necessarily true. I don't know, like Phil Hartman was a very happy person, who met an untimely end. So now we contextualize his whole life with this sense of tragedy. But they're not all Chris Farley's and stuff like that just like masking this pain. But that stereotype I think is there for a reason. Right. So maybe he's able to get to this real probing sadness, because a lot of comedy writers are, they put on that persona, that mask. Right. So when you're with other people, sure. Oh, let's yuck it up and blah, 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 and do all the impressions and be the Marx Brothers. But then like when you're alone, a lot of comedians feel that loneliness very, very well.
Yeah. And not only to like tap into, those more sad emotions, but like also just to like be able to convey them with such, I don't know if poesy is the right word, but just like I love this last line right here. It's like against all reason, against all knowledge, he prayed that there was someone to hear his prayer. He did not think so. Right. Like that's really beautiful, right? So like not only is he able to like feel these things and communicate the feeling, but like also say it in in really pretty words.
Right?
Basically. Yeah.
You got real pretty words.
But yeah. So we got this wide shot here of the church. And I just want to point out under Charis, we got this symbol. It looks like a superimposed P and X, right? But actually, this is the Chi Rho monogram, one of the oldest Christograms in existence. And so like Christogram being monogram of Christ or Christianity, right? And it superimposes the two letters Chi, C-H-I, that's the X, and Rho, R-H-O, that's the P right there. And they are the first two letters in the word for Christ. So, this symbol has, this symbol has been used within the church for centuries. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think it actually predates their use of the cross.
Oh, okay.
I tried to find the exact dates, folks. You can fact check us if you know which came first, right? The Exorcist Minute at gmail.com. I feel like a lot of our listeners are they're knowledgeable in religious history. They might be able to let us know about that. But yeah, another really cool thing about this symbol, Keenan, before it was adopted by the church, it had been seen in ancient manuscripts and writings being used to mark a particularly valuable or relevant passage of a page, abbreviating the word creston, which just meant good, right? So like people are marking pages in manuscripts saying, oh, remember this part. This is a good part, right? With this symbol, right? And so I don't know, maybe Friedkin or Blatty are saying like, hey, pay attention to this scene, right? They're putting a little Cairo, they're putting a little, mark right here.
Oh, wow.
Put a pin in this scene, right? Put a Cairo in here or a creston.
Well, thanks
right?
for doing that research because I was noticing this image because it's right in the center of the frame. I assumed it was something Christian that I wasn't aware of. But for me, looking for patterns and mirrors in the film, it looks like to me that little asterisk that we see in the glass of the grandfather clock, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's not exactly right. It's sort of rotating, et cetera. But I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's right in the center of the frame, and it's where that spot was in his dream.
Yeah. Oh, and I guess okay. So I mean, like, I guess if we're doing that, like, if we're talking about like similarities of shapes and everything, I mean, this is like an X, right? And it's got like a little body and a little head, and then like X like wings behind it. Like this could also be like maybe a Pazuzu.
Oh gosh, I don't know. That's going to get us banned. But no, certainly that's what Pazuzu looks like when he's up there in that earlier ones, right? Because I was saying I wasn't aware of this symbol, right? But that Pazuzu's wings are later on very quickly compared with the cross, right? So it's sort of rotating, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So this this Christogram that's really interesting. So it's similar to our idea of the I'm not sure how to say the ixthus. In America we call it the Jesus fish, right? That symbol, and that starts as a Greek acronym, and I forget exactly what it stands for, but it used to be a string of letters that eventually then gets adapted as into this fish looking thing, and then it looks I believe it had originally spelled out something regarding fish, and then it also had the benefit of like
fisher of men or something.
Yeah, having that association with Jesus of the fisher of men and the loaves and the fishes and all of those things, right? And so now we just have that symbol and it means all of those things, right?
Yeah. Eat fish on Fridays. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's like it does say fish, and then it also spells out something having to do with Jesus.
Interesting. Okay. And I also like like the other like name for this thing, Christon being an abbreviation for good, right? Like used as a marker for like passages in a book that you think are good passages, right? And we have it in a place where Damien can't see it, but everyone else can, right? So like we know that he doubts his own goodness. Right. And here we have him standing in front of the symbol for good, which he cannot see, but everyone else, in that congregation can see. Right. They all can see that he's standing in front of this marker for good, and he can't see it himself.
Yeah. And we see it, right? We're like, you're a good guy, Damien. You're great. We know that, like, we don't. I mean, it's possible that in a movie we could be like, this guy thinks he's shit, and we agree. Right. That's very possible. Right. But like, we were like, no, we love you, Damien.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's going to take the whole movie for you to see, but, we already know. Yeah. So after this scene, we get the beginnings of our next scene. We're back at the hospital outside Dr. Klein's office. Chris is pacing back and forth just outside that door that Dr. Klein likes to enter through, that the one with the letter A on it, right? He comes through it. He's like, hey. Right.
Exam room A.
Exam room A.
Like, Mrs. McNeil, we have a diagnosis for your sick daughter.
For your weird daughter. For your sick, weird daughter.
Nurse Payne, bring in the file for that weird girl. You know the one. I know the one, doctor.
You're not speaking loud enough. I can't hear you. Over playing with my cars.
And she has to come in and like, honk, honk, doctor, I have your files.
That's like a stipulate. Like he made her.
Exactly.
It's like you can't. No, there's no knocking in Dr. Klein's office. You gotta honk.
Dr. Klein's office. Honk, honk, doctor.
Right, and she's like so defeated when she said it. It's just like doctor, I have your files. He's like, honk, honk, doctor, I have your files.
Right. These white people, they're making me crazy. Hey. My husband is making steak when I get home. I've already called him.
Better be.
Right, exactly.
Yeesh. It's freaking doctor, I swear. Okay, so so he comes through this door. He smiles, and then he quickly looks away. And for the rest of this minute and into the next, he does not look Chris in the eye. Did we catch that? Yeah. And Keenan, someone had reached out to me, and they said, I hope you're going to talk about the doctor and the cigarette. And I think they were referring to this scene right here. We've established by now that cigarettes were just like part of the fabric of the 70s, part of the stained, greasy, nicotine marinated fabric of the 70s. Right. And so maybe this wouldn't be as shocking as today if your doc lit up in front of you. But I also wanted to get your opinion on this, Keenan. Like, health reasons aside, this also just struck me as like really cavalier and disrespectful. Like, we're talking about a serious case, about like, and he's about to drop some serious doctor theory on this. And he's having a cigarette while he's doing it. I mean, I guess like he could be nervous maybe. Right. He certainly doesn't want to look Chris in the eyes. Like what do we think?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like so in the previous time that we've been in this space, we were in his office. So through these little doors, these two doors that are in this weird office space. And it was Chris who had her cigarette, and she was like pulling it out of instinct and doesn't light it, but she seems to really, really want to. And maybe she's waiting for him to say, of course, you go ahead, right? Something like that. Yeah. And so now here he does it. And it feels like he's sort of hiding behind it, right? There are, I can think of some other 70s movies with doctors smoking, but they're both period pieces. And part of the joke is that the doctors are smoking. Annie Hall, Alvy's doctor when he's a kid in the 30s. And then in Chinatown, so this is a Woody Allen and a Polanski movie. I apologize. Yeah, okay. These are major films. But then in Chinatown, Jake is talking to the coroner. And he's a big man, middle-aged, but like a really huge man, especially for like the 30s, right? Like people were not as large as this guy was. And he says, "How you doing?" He's smoking his cigarette, and Jake says, "How's it going?" And he says, "Oh, you know me, except for this damn cough, everything's great." And he just can't figure out why he has this cough. And like both of those times, it's like a joke that back then they didn't understand. But so that's interesting. But here we have like maybe again not documentary evidence of what a real doctor would do, but certainly what was what the filmmakers thought the audience would accept as a doctor doing, right?
Right. So they're not making a joke.
Yeah.
They're not making a commentary on, look at Dr. Klein.
Doesn't seem like it, right? It doesn't seem like there's any kind of a reaction shot of Chris going like, that's weird or anything.
Right.
And she's in this hallway again. And we've seen this hallway before. We don't spend a lot of time in it. But when we get into here, it again has half the screen to the left in that blue, the same color blue that you pointed out. And then the other side is white with this curtain. So we've continued that on.
So we have the white and the blue. Yeah.
We're torn. We're between
medicalness
and family.
And family.
Yeah. We're going to need to be sorted somewhere. We need our sorting brain to sort us somewhere.
Right. Gryffindor.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I don't want to be Gryffindor.
Actually, Keenan, going back to like this coroner thing, like, have you ever seen like how many movies have coroners like eaten a sandwich?
Eating a sandwich. What does that mean?
Isn't this like a common trope? Like, or am I crazy? Because no.
You're talking about the corner of a room.
No, coroner.
Oh. Lester, I thought you had lost your mind. Because I was talking about we were talking about shooting into the corners, right? And then we bifurcated the frame between blue and white, as you were pointing out. I thought you had the corner of a room eating a sandwich.
I guess I should have said, it's like, hey, Keenan, I'm going to jump back onto that thing that we were talking about earlier before this.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. About the trope of a coroner, eating while she's doing it.
Yeah, because I've seen this in several movies. I'm thinking like Arachnophobia, where like they're examining the dead body and the coroner is so like bored. And this is just like such a day-to-day thing that he's like got like a big like egg salad sandwich or something that he's just chomping on while he's looking at this dead body. And actually, Keenan, like the reason I thought about this is Blatty writes about it in this book specifically.
Oh, okay.
When Kinderman goes to examine, Dennings's body, there's the guy, like he's like, oh yeah, let me just take you over to like, file cabinet drawer number 5 or whatever. And like he pulls out Burke Dennings and he's like eating a sandwich and like a piece of like the bread like falls onto the shroud and he wipes it away. And I'm like, so wait, is this like, am I only remembering that and like Arachnophobia?
No, I have recently seen somebody commenting on this trope recently. I forget where because I'm too much online and I don't write down my citations. But I had seen this as sort of a meme or a tweet, maybe a tweet thread or something where someone had pointed this out. Yeah, that it's now become a trope. I'm sure it started from that really happening. I'm sure that, coroners and people working in the morgue, they have to eat as well. And so it's just like when people from outside don't hang out there very often. Right. So I'm sure it just was like incredibly noticeable. But, I'm sure if you go to a police station and go into where the police officers, hang out, they're probably eating sandwiches all the time. And we might actually go ill. This is your important cases, right? You're doing like sexual violence cases and missing children and you're eating at your desk. Like, oh, how terrible. Right. But yeah, it's become a trope. I'm sure that it is. I'm sure it comes from someplace though.
Yeah. I'd like to know, like if there was like a famous movie or a famous scene or something like that, just like, because the juxtaposition of those two things, like you're amongst the dead and you're just like, stuffing your face. Right.
But where should they eat?
Right. Again. Yeah. Like I'm not saying it's right of me to think of this, like, yeah, of course they need to eat. And where else are they going to eat? Right. Like you're not going to go like, it's like, let me drive
busy,
4 blocks down and
or build a cafeteria for the coroner.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, they got to do it.
Right. It's just probably really shocking. I mean, it's like when your student sees you outside of school. Why do you exist outside of school? Mommy. Right.
It's like a unicorn. It's like I saw, Mr. Lester out, like he was buying spare ribs. I didn't know they eat.
You're right. But it's totally like, shocking, obviously, because you're seeing this thing. We deal so rarely with death that that everything in our world stops. And some of us have trouble eating at all, right? But these people, deal with death. They see a dead body every week or two and, sometimes more if you're in a big city. But but now it's to the point where it's sort of a trope. Blatty might have learned this by doing real journalism, as a journalism student, and might have actually seen this kind of thing happening. And so he might have been reporting it, from firsthand knowledge. But by now, most of us are writing this kind of scene, just copying other scenes that we've seen, not from firsthand knowledge. So it's still a trophy.
Yeah. So that's all I have for this minute. Keenan, you got anything else?
No, I think we got it.
Folks, this has been another excellent Exorcist Minute. I've been Lester Ryan Clark. You can find me on all the socials as Lester Ryan Clark.
And I am Keenan Diaz, and you can find me on Letterboxd and Instagram as Howdy Keenan.
Yes. We also have a Facebook page for the show, The Exorcist Minute. Just, hop on there and like and follow for updates. And we have a listener group. It's called Compelling Conversations. Come and join, and then you'll be in here with us. Lastly, if you like our show, the best thing you can do for a podcast that's just starting out is to leave a little 5-star review, and that'll help us reach more people, and we can keep growing this cool community. All right, Keenan. I think that's it. Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I think I am, Lester.
Folks, until next time, the power of your wet bones compels you. That bone is connected to the connected to the Pazuzu bone.
Oh, another thing, that your biggest organ is your skin.
Yes. I've heard that. Like that's a nice little riddle. That's a nice little Jeopardy question, because nobody's going to say that. Obviously. No. I have a very uncomfortable time trying to tell anybody that I'm giving fitness advice to, right? Mm-hmm. And we're talking about leg day, and I'm talking about working your glutes, right? And I'll be like, well, the biggest muscle in your body is your butt. And I have to be like, well, not your butt. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about everybody's butt is the biggest,
in one's body is
in one's body, one's butt is the biggest muscle.